Hey folks, so I do know that many people have a true fear of poetry. It's supposed to be this horrifying thing that not only do you not want to write about it, you don't even want to read it. So I've given you a lecture about reading poetry already, I really truly hope that most of your fear is gone. But I'm sure that a number of you are a bit tentative about writing about poetry. So I thought I would go over this handout, Writing About Poetry, and talk a little bit more about ways in which you can go into poetry and write about it. As opposed to most fiction and nonfiction, sometimes you can get away with writing about what the heck a poem means. Some poems are actually truly confusing, and you could help us understand the poem by simply explaining it to us. But those are very rare poems, and I don't tend to assign poems like that in my classes very often. So I think that is your paper of last resort. You don't really want to tell us what is happening in the poem. You do have to come up with an opinion about the poems that you are writing about. You have to have a feeling about them. And so what I think you might want to do is, in the paper, you're going to need to either gather 2 or 3 poems from different poets or from the same poet, depending on the assignment. And you might want to, for instance, find how these poems tackle a similar theme. In some of the books that I assign, the books are organized thematically, and you might say, well, these poems dealt with loss, but one of them did so by being mordantly humorous or funny. The others use really specific, sad details to show this poem about loss, or death, or whatever, or love, for instance. How do writers write about love? Some people are very sappy and some people are very ironic, and you can write about how they dealt with themes differently. If it's the same poet, you might find that a poet is beating the same drum a couple of times, and that is also interesting to look at how these themes are developed by one poet, differently or similarly. You can compare them or you can contrast them depending on what you're finding in the poems themselves. Poetry is really focused on language, usually imagery, the use of metaphor, use of simile, use of symbol, use of voice, these kinds of things. So you might want to see, as the handout suggests, if you have poems that really, maybe you found 4 poems that you feel like the poet's in the room with you. The voice is so clear. And you say, oh my goodness, now how did the poet create voice like that? How did the poet really present to us this persona in this poem that seems to be so real? Maybe it's the specific use of vocabulary. Maybe it's the use of vernacular, the kind of language that appears in a particular place. Maybe that's what creates, that particular voice, that clear, as if there's a clear character sitting right there. You could really talk about tone and mood. Things that are, a tone is the sound of the poem, the overall sound of the poem. It can be a clear tone, a sad tone, a sarcastic tone, a humorous tone. And mood is sort of what comes off the page and makes you feel. I often think of Edgar Allan Poe when I think of mood, because everything's black and there are big birds cawing and there's towers and everyone's in an opium den and everything is lost. And I feel pretty bad usually after reading a lot of Poe. But maybe you could do a whole paper on mood and tone. And how they maybe work together. So the other things you can focus on that aren't actually in this handout, you might focus on the way poems are shaped, the line breaks, the shape of the poem. Is it fat? And does it get skinny? And why? Does the shape create meaning? Are the line breaks, is it all left justified? Or has the poet decided to work on this side of the page? Is the poet centering everything? You know, these are the things that poems do that short stories don't do, right? We don't get a whole bunch of maneuvering on the page when we're reading a novel. But in a poem, we can be here on the page. Also, there can be no punctuation, no periods, no question marks, no dashes, no capitalization even. What is that doing to the poem? Okay. On the other hand, in fixed form poetry, a sonnet, a villanelle, a haiku, a triolet, what does the form do to the meaning of the poem? Does the form hold back the poem? Does the form open up the poem? Does a rhyming limit the poet? I think that's something that you can look into. So there's a lot to do with poetry, but mostly you just need to not be afraid of it. It's accessible to you. And one of the things that can help you more than anything is to read it, read your poem again, read it again, and I think it will begin to speak to you and then start speaking to other poems that you want to write about. Okay, good luck.